ShopChat! ShopChat!
It is very rare in life when you get the chance to talk to someone who just might be the very best at what they do. But today on Shop Chat, we get to do exactly that as we interview your two-time Sweet Adeline International Queen of Harmony and world extraordinary lead singer, Miss Debbie Cleveland.
Out of sync again. You call that a dynamic blend? Have you heard of target vows? Bowling leagues are forming now. And Calgary and New
So glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Shane. That was a beautiful and surprising introduction compared to the things you normally say about me.
That'll be on the blooper roll here later on. So, well, Debbie, we're really excited to have you on the show. And I wanted to begin not by asking you about your barbershop life, but trying to understand a little bit about your own background just as a person that got you interested in singing and in music in the first place. So tell us, how did you become interested in singing, and what's your background in music?
I was born at a very young age, and from there, I made that line up. I grew up in a family of singers. My parents sang in a gospel quartet on the radio back in the day in the 50s in Tennessee. My father was a minister, and so my family grew up singing gospel music together. We knew hundreds of hymns just by osmosis of being, in church all the time, and we knew all the parts. So we all sang all the parts except bass. My dad sang the bass, and so that was my background, and I just was drawn, to singing, and so I joined chorus in junior high, and I loved my junior high chorus teacher. I thought she was amazing, and I said in 8th grade, I said I want to be like her, and I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life. So I went to college as a music major in voice and music education, and so that's kind of how it all happened. I sang all through high school. I loved musical theater and putting together the gospel of harmonies, and musical theater is kind of a little bit description of barbershop.
Yeah, sure. So you not only had a love of music in general, but especially that kind of close harmony that like gospel singing kind of lends itself to, especially. And then you got some reinforcement in school. So then I'm curious, a lot of people who particularly study like voice and then who become vocal educators like you did have sort of an allergy maybe to barbershop. I think that's changing quite a bit actually, but I know when I was younger, I would kind of hear that. So I'm really curious, what were the steps that led you to discover Sweet Adelines?
Well, when I was in college here in Tampa, a friend, Gina Ogden, was a friend that I met through chorus at Florida College, and she was a couple years ahead of me, but she came back to coach the barbershop quartet, and she heard me sing and whatever, and then second semester, the girls quartet bass decided to go home for second semester, and so they roped me in as their bass, even though that wasn't my first part. I came and sang bass in the quartet because I could hit an F below middle C. So anyway, it went from there, and then Gina asked me to be in a quartet, and that quartet became Showtime, and we stayed together for almost 20 years. So that's the rest is history, I guess, from Gina asking. But I agree with you that there has been in the past kind of a stigma attached. I know as a young music educator, I kind of learned to say, oh yeah, I sing barbershop, and put it off to the side. But it's really that veil has lifted in so many ways because of the fantastic education in the Barbershop Harmony Society and in Sweet Adelines, we're teaching our singers to be healthier, and the music we're creating is more healthy and vibrant and aesthetically pleasing, I think, to the general public.
Now, was your college choir teacher, was he or she involved in barbershop as well?
Well, at Florida College, our director at the time, James Walker, he went by the nickname Duty. Duty Walker was a great fan of barbershop, and he sang in quartets, and yeah, so actually my high school teacher was not in barbershop, but he had a men's quartet every year, and so I kind of pushed to be in a girls quartet in high school too. But anyway, yeah, and then moving on from Florida College to University of South Florida, nobody was in barbershop, and I actually didn't tell my voice teacher I was singing barbershop for a long time, because I figured if it wasn't hurting me and she couldn't tell,
right?
Yeah, then there was no need. And when it all came out, it ended up being fine.
Well, that's very interesting. Now, I do think, in the interest of full disclosure for our audience, that I should also acknowledge that I attended the same college, Florida College, and in fact, much later, after you were a student there, many years later, when I was a student there, I actually got to hear you guys sing in various events on campus. And when I tell people about how I became interested in barbershop, one of the things I always mention is getting to hear Showtime sing in performances on campus. I mean, I grew up with a similar love for harmony, but I had never heard it done, at that point in my life with such precision and beauty as you guys. So I have to give a little shout out to our alma mater, because between you and Gina and Cindy LeMasters and me and Myron, well, I can't put myself in that category, but I would say of you guys, it probably has, per student population capita, the highest percentage of champion barbershop singers for sure. So
maybe Bowling Green State.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. We might have to, or Lee University, might have to slug it out.
But Florida College is tiny, so we have that in our favor. I think
That's,
percentage-wise, we might be close.
That's right. So now you've already mentioned Showtime, and again, in the interest of full disclosure, I must say my all-time favorite, Sweet Adeline International Quartet. And you've already told me a little bit about how you guys got started. So I wanted to talk with you about your contest history some. I'm very fascinated by this. So as best as I could find in research, you guys debuted in 1987 at the international competition in 3rd place.
That's true.
And then the next year you finished 3rd, and then the next year you finished 4th, and then the next year you didn't even make the 10. Now I would love,
we didn't even make the 20.
The 20. I want you to, and was that still at the point, did Sweet Adelines have 3 rounds of competition at that point?
Yes, back in the good old days when women were women and we had to compete 3 times.
Like today, where it's just the 2 rounds, but like more like the men's contest where there were 3. So I'm really curious. Tell us what happened in that 1990 contest.
A big education happened, is what happened in the 1990 contest. We were always looking for new and inventive things to do, and our favorite thing in the world to do was make people laugh. And you would know about that, Shane, from being in a quartet that tried to do that same thing. But you know the joy of that. I mean, making people laugh is just the best. And so we did many things to entertain and sing and try and make people laugh. And that year, the movie Dick Tracy came out, and it was for those of you who don't know, it was back in the day. Warren Beatty played Dick Tracy, and Madonna played his girlfriend, and it was a cartoon character takeoff. So he wore the bright yellow coat and the bright yellow hat, and had the Tommy gun and all that. It was very just like the comic strip kind of, and just like kind of, and
right.
So we decided to take that very popular movie at the time and build a package around Dick Tracy. And so as the lead, I was Dick Tracy. I wore the yellow coat, the yellow hat, and I had the plastic gun. And the other 3 were dressed as convicts and in black and white stripes, and they wore handcuffs. And we did a couple of parodies to songs. We sang wave your little hand and whisper so long, dearie. And I was like singing it to them, taking them off to jail.
Right.
And they, and then we sang, I'm all alone. Nobody loves me, but it was, I'm all alone in solitary. And
Gotcha.
so both songs were complete parodies and went over very well. Each song got a standing ovation from the audience. And, but we did some crazy things like, the three of them stood on their knees, got down on their knees and to sing I'm all alone. And, at the end of the up tune, I did a little thing and shot, which back then wasn't as controversial as it would be today. It was just kind of bad taste. I shouldn't have aimed at the judges. It was bad. But the basic takeaway was that all of that took away from our singing enough to put us out of the top 20. So
now let me just follow up, because I had heard a story years ago, because of what my quartet did in trying to write parodies. I had heard that parodies were not that done, had not really been done before until you guys did that set, but I don't know if that's true or not. So had there been parody quartets in Sweet Adelines competition before?
Well, not that I know of. There were some quartets who did comedic things,
Right.
But I don't know full parody packages like that. I think it was kind of a newer thing. And at one point, there's a part in the ballad that, I don't know how much in detail you want me to go, but there's a
No,
part
I'm really fascinated by this. I would like, if you're okay with that, I'd love to hear
Sure.
more about this.
There's a part in the ballad that says, I telephone, but no one answers. I don't leave, but our words were, I telephone, but no one answers. I leave my name, number, and brief message after the tone. And one of the comments was that we took the line out of meter, that we weren't paying attention to the meter. So it was kind of a time when they didn't allow for those things. So, yeah, that wasn't good. And one of the showmanship comments we got that I'll never forget was, handcuffs can be restrictive to movement. That was the best. So, you know, to their ears, we were not sounding like a top 20 quartet, and they are the judges, and we learned a lot from that. The other thing we learned from that year was sitting and listening to the rest of the contest, because when we competed, personally, I don't care to go out and hear a lot of other quartets.
Right.
Some people can do that and be fine. I'm just not crazy about that. So I wouldn't watch most of the contest. And 87 was my first international, and when we were competing. So sitting in that contest and watching the top 20, being very humbled, and also just learning, and then seeing the top 10 and seeing Panache win that year, singing Sweet Adeline. It was, I just get chills thinking about it. It was such a great experience in hindsight. And at the time, it was an awful experience.
I gotcha. Well, I just want to ask one or two more follow-up questions on that. Had there been, before you guys did that set, were there specific rules that stated you weren't supposed to do parodies, or was it more just an understood kind of unwritten rule?
Yeah, I think it was not even necessarily an unwritten rule. And I can't speak, I mean, I'm interested to ask maybe somebody who's been in the judging community a long time those questions, but I think it was not necessarily any kind of unwritten rule. I just don't think anybody ever did anything that crazy where they just were like, what just happened? There was like a 20-minute conference after we sang. So I think they were just saying, is there enough redeeming quality in that to move them on? Or so.
Right. Well, you know, I think first of all, in general, comedy is a very high risk, high reward kind of entertainment in our contest setting. And the other thing is that sometimes people can be a little bit ahead of their time, you know, and maybe this was one of those instances where what you guys did, although in the moment maybe didn't go over so well with people, but you know, now there've been a lot of, I don't know how the rules have changed for Sweet Adelines, but just in my limited experience, particularly watching the quartet finals, there are a lot of very enjoyable and entertaining, you know, packages now. So maybe you guys were the pioneers. That's how I would like to think of it in that regard.
Oh my goodness, I appreciate that very much. I wouldn't be so bold as to say that myself, but But I appreciate you saying that. And honestly, nothing we ever did came out of any kind of disrespect for the system.
Of course
it was always
not.
just like, wouldn't this be fun? And we were young and brash, and we just did it. So
Right. No, I think I think it's very rare, honestly, that in any contest setting, people would intentionally try to be off-putting. It's just really a desire to entertain the audience. So I know that it had to be a crushing disappointment to go from, the top 4 to not even making the 20. But this story does have a happy ending because you guys came back to finish second the year after. And then again in 1992. Now I'm curious, when you all came back, did you do some parody type comedic performances in those next 2 contests?
not parody per se. We
Yeah.
still had splashes of comedy here and there. And then in the finals package, of course, in Sweet Adelines, you're allowed to do other non-contest songs.
Right.
So we kept our contest songs pretty much to a ballad, a straight ballad, and then an uptune with some fun. I think we were a little burned after that, not wanting to, go off the deep end. And it really did become a goal for us, oh, this would be fun to win.
Right.
So let's do what scores well and whatever. But it was much
Gotcha.
more fun to be second the first time we were second. That was awesome. And then the second time we were honored, but it wasn't quite as fun as the first time. So.
Well, let's talk about that because, I think we've all seen quartets that sort of get up into that rarefied air and then have a couple of close calls and don't quite make it. And then they just, for whatever reasons, they just decide, you know what, this isn't going to be for us. So what kept you guys together to keep pushing ahead?
Well, we were really lucky, and I think part of it was because we had the comedic part to offer, that we did a lot of shows. We got we had a busy schedule. We kept it to once a month for our sanity and for our other our real jobs and all that. But we did a lot of shows, and I think that kept us going. And then really deciding, we do want this, and we're so close. And I think one of the things that took us over the top was finally deciding, even if we don't, we're having a great time, and people are so embracing of us, and we love the audiences and the opportunities we have to meet people and go places. And so why not, So
That's so interesting. I can't tell you, Debbie, how many championship quartets we've interviewed just in the short time of ShopChat that all have a similar trajectory, in that it is the drive to win that gets them up to the brink. But then it is that final realization that we enjoy what we're doing so much it doesn't matter, that actually enables them to take that last step. It's just that it's a peculiar psychology. I don't suppose there's any way to get around this. I think this must inevitably be the path that groups have to follow. But finally, in 1993 in Indianapolis, it all came together. Was there anything different at all about your actual contest preparation and approach leading into that contest?
Well, we really did double down on details.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we had the luxury of all living in the same city. And so a couple of weeks before the international, we actually got together every night and ran our 3 sets and went home with no talking, in between, or no critique, no nothing, no trying to make it better. Just run the sets. And we did that every night for 2 weeks. And when we got to international and just did 2 songs, it felt like, well, that was easy. And
right.
It's like tying my shoes. I do it every day. So
right.
So that was one thing we did differently, I think, was drill down on the details. And then the other thing was on the day of contest, because it always seemed to, we just didn't always have our best singing hits at contests. It was more on shows. So on contest day finals, we made a pact that no one was going to talk about competing. We were doing a show.
Yeah.
And so we talked about how big the audience was. There were 6,000 people at the show, and how special people paid to get those seats up close at the tables because they loved us so much. And we made up whole scenarios. After the show, we're going to go to this wonderful afterglow. And it became a game. And it was so relaxing that we just kept saying, we're just doing one big show, and here we go. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's great. And, I think that particularly in the finals rules that Sweet Adelines has, assuming they were fairly typical, you know, back at that point in time, that finals really is basically a show. It's basically a show performance. And especially when you're trying to do funny things, the more people you can jam into that auditorium, the better. It's not a nerve-wracking thing, because you know that laughter is going to feed on laughter, and it's just going to enhance the whole production. So finally, you get to hear your names called as the champions. You've already mentioned that you guys were doing a lot of shows. You guys were an exceptionally popular show quartet. Are there some personal highlights in your Showtime travels as you all got to travel around the world that you'd like to share with us?
Wow. I wish I had a better memory. Because certainly there are some great ones. Oh my goodness. We did get, well, part of the joy was just being together and spending time together and laughing together and all of that, and going through the travails of traveling and waiting for luggage and losing luggage and those things. But really going to meet people in other countries, experiencing their cultures. I would say too, one of my really fond memories that just came up recently because of Marquis singing at the AIC show was the PBS special that we did, Voices in Harmony, with Gas House Gang and Marquis, and the Gem City Chorus was also on that show. And it took an entire day of filming, but just being there up close and with those professionals and being on the PBS special, just getting to film that and everything, that was a really neat memory. But there are almost so many that I can't pick one.
I think if people are interested, they can go onto YouTube and just search Showtime PBS special, and you'll probably find some of the clips from that. It is a really neat thing to get to see you guys and the Gas House Gang and Marquis kind of all doing your thing together is very special. Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit just about some of the basics of singing barbershop. You have such a beautiful, crystal clear lead voice. I'm really curious, first of all, I don't know nearly as much about Sweet Adelines as I should, but I remember that when I first started listening to various quartets, it seemed like there was a certain vocal approach to a lot of lead singing in Sweet Adeline that I'm not sure what the right terminology is, whether it would be more of a classical sound, or maybe more of an emphasis on sort of like what in a lot of BHS choruses in the mid 90s, that very choral kind of sound. But you've always had such a clear and bright lead voice. I'm kind of curious, what is that something that just is your natural voice, so that's what you went with, or was there something about vocal production that made you go that way? I'm just kind of curious about how you sing lead as compared to like the culture of Sweet Adelines.
Well, that's an interesting question.
That's why you come on this show, is for interesting questions.
It is for interesting questions. And I wouldn't want to disparage the sounds that anybody else makes. I mean, everybody, has their own individual style. I think we are coached, in general to use as much resonance as possible and all of that. And I know early on, I was not blending my classical training at all with my barbershop singing, and I started to like hurt myself a little bit. And so the great Jim Casey coached me and said, you need to bring more of that classical approach, meaning more ease in the tone and stuff like that. More E-A-S-E, ease, not the vowel E.
Right.
But anyway, and I didn't at first. I was like, thanks, Jim. No, like in my head.
Right.
And I started to lose my voice a little bit. So I started trying to use more mixed tone in my sound.
Yeah.
But as far as the tone and timbre of my voice, I guess it's just what I got is what I got. That's it.
Sure. Very good. Well, I think, I mean, I've noticed, I've been in the society about 22 years or so, and certainly the pendulum swings a lot, just like in general terms in the kind of vocal approach that's sort of commonly practiced. And I was just kind of curious from your vantage point, having the background that you did, how you approached it.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that too. I think it really, in both societies, and it's swung further to the taller, richer, let's be more open and free.
Right.
And then it's come back more to a more natural sound.
That's right.
Now. And I'm really digging it.
Yeah, very cool. So what would you offer to an aspiring lead singer as some of the things you found to be most helpful for you as you would rehearse the lead part?
That's a good question. I jokingly, half jokingly would say, worry about singing the song and let the other three people worry about everything else.
Okay.
You know, I'm not going to balance and tune and blend with you.
Right.
If I'm doing my job and singing the song, it's up to the three of you to do the rest, unless I don't have the melody part, and then I have to learn to do those things. But I don't prefer to not have the melody. I prefer, that's why I signed up to sing lead. So so that's kind of half of it, but I think that really is true to a point, and it extends on. Become a better solo singer. You know, practice singing by yourself. Go sing karaoke somewhere when karaoke places are open again. You know, become the song. And if whatever styles you aspire to sing, listen to them and know what they're supposed to sound like, and listen to great soloists and do your part to sing your part well enough that the other three have something to hang on to. Gotcha.
What do you enjoy the most about singing lead? Like you mentioned that you had a brief foray into bass singing. So what is it that you enjoy the most about the lead part?
It's the melody. It's the song. You know, it's what the guy or lady started out with when they wrote the song. And, and a beautiful melody is so well paired with the lyrics that it's kind of like an expression that comes out of me without a thought process. And the other parts have way too much thought process. I just want to feel it. And sing it. I don't want to think about it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, now one of the quartets that edged you guys out in 1992 was called City Lights. Oh, before I go on with this question,
I knew this was going to come up.
Yes. So, would you please explain to people like me who are not very bright, how is it that Sweet Adeline champions compete in one year, but their championship year is another year? And I can never figure this out. It's like doing taxes. Could you please explain this to me?
I agree. It's very mentally challenging for me to remember. It actually started
your all's year, right?
The year we won.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of us, so don't blame us. But, I guess the fact was that the contest is always at the end of the calendar year, October or even November. I think we competed in November of the year we won. So when we won in 93, and they say the 1993 champions, and that sounds very current for a month and a half.
Right.
And then as soon as January hits and it's 1994, you're like, oh, well, they're last year's champions. Who's this year's champions?
Gotcha.
So they moved the year ahead that year. And it is a little confusing because we're the 94 champs, but we won in November of 93. So
gotcha. I guess I try to think of it like the NFL team that wins the Super Bowl. Actually, the Super Bowl is played in the calendar year after the season that they are the champions in. So it's kind of sort of like that. All right. Now
and many people have compared us to Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, that's right. Now back to my hard-hitting personal question I was getting to just for a second. One of the quartets that edged you out in 1992 was called City Lights. Two members of that quartet, however, later came to be part of a new quartet with you called The Buzz. So what I'm really curious about, this is a two-part question. What motivated you to want to compete again? And how did you end up singing with Nancy and Jeannie? And then, of course, the fourth member would be Karen Breitert from Jubilation Quartet.
Well, Shane, they didn't just edge us out. They took it handily. And it's so rude, actually. I mean, the year before, when we were second, they were third. And don't you think it would have been polite for them just to wait their turn
New
come back.
Jersey. It's that New
Oh,
Jersey attitude, right?
oh, they
Yeah.
just cut in line, you know.
Right.
So when we, that's a good question too about singing again, because Karen actually is the one who contacted me. And at the time, Showtime had announced our retirement and we were winding down our shows. And she contacted me. And the first thing I said was, I really don't think I want to do this again because Showtime was such a special experience. And thinking about the mountain of work that it took, not just to
Right.
win, but to build up a body of music and to,
Right.
you know, I just said, I don't know if I can ever do that again. And they're like my best friend. So
Right.
I'm not sure that'll work. But I did think very highly of Karen. I knew her from Sweet Adelines a little bit, and I knew how well thought of she was. And she's just such a delightful person to be around. I can still say that 18 years later. She's an amazing person to be around. So that was a big draw. And then she said, well, I've been talking or asking around with some people and trying to, you know, find some people with common experiences who might want to sing together. And she said, I contacted Jeannie, the bass of City Lights, and she said she would really like to sing with Nancy again from City Lights. So I was like, well, yeah, but they beat me in 92. And no, I didn't say that.
Actually, let me just interrupt here just for a second. So a couple of months ago, I don't know how this came up, but on my YouTube feed, a video came up of City Lights. And they were singing an arrangement of Broadway Rose that I really just, I mean, it is such a barbershop classic arrangement. And I wanted to contact Nancy and Jeannie and tell them how much I loved that performance, but I didn't have their contact info. So guess who I contacted to get their information from? None other than Debbie. And of course, this is the quartet that beat them their second time to finish second place. Do you remember what you said to me in response to my inquiry, Ms. Cleveland?
No, but I'm sure you're going to remind me.
You said, this is like asking for another girl's phone number. So
From a former girlfriend or
from a former
right?
girlfriend, right? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Sherry,
All right.
you should know better.
So you have these vicious enemies in Nancy and Jeannie. So how in the world does this all come together?
Oh my goodness. What's so funny? Well, we got together to sing and just instantly loved it and loved each other. But when I had, brought it up to them in a joking way, when we didn't know each other that well, at first they'd be very apologetic and they'd be like, oh my goodness, we felt so bad when you came in second. We did want to win, but we really wanted you to win. And,
right.
and you'd been there so long and blah, blah, blah. And then by the end of our time together, whenever it came up, they'd be like, yeah, we kicked your butt in 92.
The real truth.
Right. It was a total turnaround. So
right.
They got to where they would bring it up, as a matter of fact. I would always act like it didn't bother me anymore and that I was totally over it and I don't need therapy for it.
So now you go from being in a quartet where you are literally close enough that you could run to your sets every night with Showtime to now you've got, I guess, Nancy and Jeannie are both in New Jersey area. Is that
Yes.
right? Was Karen in Florida at that point?
Karen's lived in a lot of places. She was living in New Hampshire part of the year and in Fort Myers part of the year.
Oh, okay.
For a brief time, she lived in North Carolina. Then she was in Jacksonville full time. So she was in different places. But yes, the other two were mostly in New Jersey, and Karen was mostly with me in Florida during the months when the New Jersey girls would prefer to come to Florida.
Sure. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So then how did that go in terms of like getting into the flow of this new kind of rehearsal routine?
Well, when we decided it could be a thing, we looked at our calendars and said, if we can get together, make an investment to get together once every month or so, we'll take turns. You know, you come down, we'll go up there, or you come down during the winter months, we'll go up there during the summer. And just made that investment of time and worked really hard in between those rehearsals that were a month or so apart.
But you all must have clicked so well, not only musically, but personally, because that's such an added sacrifice to make when you've got to go on the road just to rehearse. So how quickly did you realize, this is going to be a cool situation?
You know, even if the singing part hadn't worked out, the friendships and the blend of personalities is magical in the Buzz. And I'm so grateful to have gotten to know them. And I know, you know, you take those personality tests or whatever that tell you what type of person you are. It's interesting that Jeannie is one of the four. Jeannie's one, Nancy's one, and Karen and I are both combos of the other two types.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah. So we have all of the personality types kind of covered. And I don't know, but like I said, it was partly our shared experience. They had had the experience of City Lights. Karen had been in Jubilation and many other quartets. And with the experiences I had had, it was just kind of like talking to peers and having these fantastic new experiences together. So, and our families ended up getting along. Our husbands love each other, the buzzards, you know. So just,
all right. So now then you guys roll into, I guess it would be, again, you have to pardon me, 2004 is when your contest will be, right? Okay. So you roll into regional competition, gearing up, and you post a score of 665 points, which, if I was looking at the right numbers, appeared to remain the highest regional score for about 12 years.
you've really done your homework, Shane.
Yes.
I am
So,
impressed.
wow, you know, so this is an incredibly high score. So how much pressure did you all feel, not only as four past champs, you know, forming a new quartet, which has a certain amount of pressure, but then you go out to regional and you just set this like all-time record for a regional score?
Well, I don't, now that you say it, I'm glad I didn't talk to you then. I would have felt a lot of pressure. I think we were surprised. I mean, to say the least, we were just like, wow. And, you know, Region 9 typically is a higher scoring region.
Right.
So it's not unheard of. And not, I think that has to do with a lot of things, not just that our quartets are 10 times better, but our venue's really nice. And there's a lot of things that go into what I think. Anyway, I don't know about judging. You can cut all of that. I have no idea what I'm saying. But
yeah.
the high score did not necessarily, for me, make me feel pressure. I was excited about it and surprised, but it still was our first, you know, our first international. So it was like, this is our first time. Nobody's expecting too much. I don't know.
Right.
You know,
Now this,
and I'm sorry, it's not quite the same as the men's where the scores are all compared. Our top 15 doesn't go back to regional.
oh, that's true. Right.
So
right.
Always the assumption that they could have scored higher.
That's right. I see what you're saying. It's not quite an apples to apples comparison then going in. So now this is where you will have to help me, because I tried to do some research on this and I did fail in this homework. I was trying to find out the last three Sweet Adeline quartets to win their first time out. And there may not even be three, quite honest. I mean, obviously in the early history, that would have been the case, but, you know, in relatively recent history. So before the buzz, can you just tell me and our listeners, what was the last Sweet Adeline quartet to win their first international?
As far as I know, Ambiance in 1986 was and there may have been one much earlier on, although not the first contest, but Ambiance was the quartet that had won their first time out before the buzz.
Kind of like acoustics for BHS, right?
Yes.
Now, I knew that Debbie would know this because one of Showtime's songs is a rehearsal of all of the Sweet Adeline international quartets. And I remembered you made that comment about Ambiance winning their first time out. I just didn't know how often that had happened. So here you guys set this huge regional score, and you're trying to attempt something that it certainly is a rarity in Sweet Adelines. And once again, you go to the city of Indianapolis for your contest. So totally honest, Debbie, now you got to level with this.
Oh, no.
What were your expectations going into that contest?
You asked a very good question, Shane. And everybody, I'm sure, in a competitive world like that who has done it would set goals for themselves. And our goal, honestly, we had a primary goal and a visionary goal. Our primary goal was to make the 10 our first time, and our visionary goal was to be a top 5 medalist the first time, based on, like you said, our regional score and the expectations kind of that our coaches had set for us and whatever. And my feeling was, if we could by some chance make the 5, you know, we could build up a fan base and have, like, you know, few, who know how many years running to try and go for the gold. And Jeannie's husband was like, why would anybody go to a contest and try not to win? But that was the plan, you know, that was kind of our plan going in. And on the stage, when they called us and we were hugging, Jeannie says, what happened to the plan?
Oh, that is fantastic. Well, both quartets, The Buzz and Showtime, just so entertaining, have brought so much joy to so many audiences. I know this could be really hard to try to summarize, but if you were going to talk about the special blessings that each quartet has brought to you, how would you summarize that for us?
Wow, I'm gonna cry. Showtime was my growing up. You know, I was a young mom, and I went through so much with my family and with my kids and everything. I was, and they were like second moms to my kids. You know, they were there for, we were, I hope, there for all for each other.
Right.
And we also were young and made all those mistakes together.
Sure.
We laughed together. We had all these first experiences together, and it was, so I guess I would say it was my growing up quartet. And what a joy just to have the creative, you know, options, the creativity that Gina brought to our quartet, and Cindy and I contributed too, and at different times, different basses. Dana ended up being our championship bass and our staying with us forever. But, you know, we all contributed, but what Gina brings to the table is another level. So I'd say all of that, the artistic creativity and just the bond of kind of growing up together as young adults. And then I think with the Buzz, because we had all done it before, I think we cherished every moment a little bit more. It didn't get by. It didn't, like 10 years didn't go by and we're like, what happened?
Right.
Every show, every song we learned that we loved, every CD that we made, we just celebrated every meal that we had. We celebrated every moment. And I think we were super thankful for everything along the way.
Well, I know that as you guys realized you were coming down the home stretch of your career together, that I would notice on social media, you guys would make posts that indicated you very intentionally were relishing every one of these last moments because you knew how special this had been. And it would be neat to be able to have the joy and exuberance of our younger years, but the genuine appreciation for what we get to experience that we get when we get a little bit older. But you've, in your two quartets, you've got to experience both of those things.
Absolutely. And I feel so blessed just to have any kind of a gift of music and be able to share it in such a personal way with other people, and then to be able to share it with many people is a blessing I don't deserve, but I'm so grateful.
Well, you have certainly, and your quartets have given far more than you've received, and we're all blessed for that. Now, in real life, you have been a very successful and highly honored music educator. Now, the time that I've known you, Debbie, it's been here in Tampa at Gaither High School. Is that pretty much where you taught most of your career?
I taught for 10 years, 12 years at Adams, which was a junior high and then a middle school. So 12 years there, and then I've been 23 years at Gaither. So that's this is my 35th year.
Now, that's one thing I was unclear about. I knew that I've talked a little bit about retirement might be looming on the near horizon, maybe, but I couldn't remember. So you are teaching again this coming year?
I am teaching again this year. Retirement is still, you know, a little carrot out there dangling.
Oh, okay.
and I'm thinking about it, but I've got a little bit longer to go. And again, relishing every moment, although with the current situation as things are, depending on when people are viewing this, this is obviously hopefully wrapping up the end of COVID, but we're starting the school year of 2020 with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of uncertainty surrounding singing. So I'm not coasting into my final years as much as I'd hoped. I feel like a first year teacher saying, what am I doing and what's going on? But,
Right. Well, if the audience will pardon a quick little personal conversation, I was so afraid. I like say I couldn't remember when, if you had set a date to retire, but I was so afraid that last year was going to be your last year and it was going to end in such a horrible way, especially for music teachers, with things being canceled and in-person instruction being canceled, and then of course on the other side of the equation, so many of you are having to plan for in-person instruction plus online instruction and all points in between. So I really hope that that'll go as well as it can for you, and mostly and most of all that it'll be safe. But I wanted to ask you, I'm really curious in these two worlds you've lived in, which is as a barbershop singer and performer, and then also as a music teacher. How much has your barbershop training bled over into your music education, and how much has your music educator life bled over into your barbershop life?
I think that the general music education that we receive through barbershop at events like IES and Harmony University, just to name a couple, I mean, I think the level of that is so high that I've taken tons of that into my classroom, things that I've learned about chord structures and overtones and vocal production and choral sound and riser placement. I mean, there's just numbers of things that I've taken into my choral classroom from the barbershop world. And I think my worlds have kind of collided with my students in the past few years becoming a barbershop chorus. So,
Right.
So that's been interesting, and having students join quartets and things. But I think the music education is always a part of who I am too when I'm in barbershop, because going into barbershop situations and being in teaching mode, I think the experience that I've had in the classroom, just the comfort of being in a classroom and teaching all the time, definitely carries over in those instances where I've been invited to teach in barbershop.
Sure. I'm so happy to hear what you said just a moment ago, because we've both had the opportunity to be on the faculty at Harmony University. And I know you've been on many music faculties in the greater barbershop universe, but I have heard many music educators who have come to Harmony U talk about the level of instruction that they get at our schools being much greater than a lot of the instruction they actually got, in their own schools. And I think that that's something that all of our barbershop organizations can be really proud about. And it's something that we have that's such great offer to the broader musical education world. And I think that's it's been a big reason why that a lot of attitudes among music educators, broadly speaking, have maybe changed some about barbershop, because they're seeing what a fine product we have. But it's so cool to hear you, as someone who's a lifelong, professional music educator, have the same experience, even just in your world.
Absolutely. The concentration of the quality, going to one of those weekends and seeing these, just one fantastic teacher after another, and so approachable, so personal, and being able to walk up and sing with them. And, that's not the kind of thing you get in other places either.
Right. Sure. So, well, that's novel. Great. Now, I'm really curious, and again, this may be too broad a question, but teaching is taxing. It's taxing on you physically. It's taxing on your voice, for sure. You have maintained such great, vocal quality all of your life. I'm just really kind of curious, what have you done to maintain your vocal hygiene through not only the teaching you do? Like I taught like a 40-minute children's class earlier this year, and like I had to go on vocal rest for like 2 weeks. It was like, this is crazy. So what have you done just to physically take care of your voice all of these years teaching?
Well, let me clear my throat to answer that. First of all, I'm trying to do a full cough instead of a clearing my throat.
That's right.
That's better.
You're not supposed to do that.
But learning a lot about my voice from having vocal problems has been a huge help that I learned in a hard way. But learning all the things, if you want to be healthy, you sleep and you don't drink a lot of caffeine and you drink a lot of water, and
Yeah.
you speak in a higher tone instead of down on the bottom of your chords. So
Right.
I should be doing more of that right now. I will say this, that during this time that I've been home resting and not teaching, and I've been singing a little bit here at home, I feel like it's the first time in a long time that I've consistently been 100%
Ah,
in my singing, because I'm so rested. And I feel like I can look back at any video of any show and say, oh, I was only 87%. I was working with a hurt, a sprained ankle. So I never felt like I was 100% because I was always tired. Vocally, you're right.
just say what everybody is thinking right now. Where do I sign up just to get 50%, Debbie Cleveland? Because I will gladly take that.
That is very kind of you. Thank you.
So you've had such a wonderful career teaching. If you were to try to pinpoint what your greatest satisfaction or satisfactions has been as a music educator, what could you share with us?
That's a big question. My greatest satisfaction as a music educator. There's a certain satisfaction that happens with every performance, especially the big performances where so many things come together.
Mm-hmm.
Weeks and weeks of details come together. And sitting back and being able to just watch the show, watch my students on stage, and see those performances come together and watch them shine and see them do things they would never have thought they could do before is unbelievably satisfying. The long-term relationships I've made with students that have, kept in touch with me, those are totally invaluable. And also, I think of the troubled, students,
Mm-hmm.
the students who've really needed music and singing, and they needed the chorus room. It was their haven. It was the only place they could
Right.
feel okay. I think that's a
Right.
huge satisfaction. And we don't always know who those kids are, but some of them share and let us know, or maybe they let us know later. So that was kind of 3 for your greatest satisfaction question, but those were all came to mind.
Yeah, no, well, those, it's a multifaceted, obviously a career like this, there are going to be multiple engines that are running to keep you motivated to do it. But it doesn't surprise me at all. I know that my friends who are music educators, particularly at the end of the semesters, and that's when all of these performances and all the different ensembles start coming up. And part of me thinks how exciting it would be to have so much music flowing through your life all the time. And then part of me just wants to go sleep because I just get tired just thinking about what you guys do. But obviously, particularly, I think about the teachers I had in high school. The one teacher I had more than any other was my orchestra director, because I was with him every day for 4 years, So
Yeah.
you do build special bonds with those teachers. And, to trace back to the start of our time together, it was some of those teachers you had that set you on the path that you're on today. So you are a living demonstration of the kind of satisfaction you can get in the impact you've been sharing with your students as well.
I appreciate that. It's been a blessing. I don't know why God picked me to do what I've done, but I'm grateful that He led me on this path and that I took the opportunity and went into the classroom. It's been amazing.
Well, that's fantastic. So Debbie, one last question to ask you. You've had this very remarkable barbershop career. You are not completely at the end of a music educator career, but certainly, you've got more of it behind you than ahead of you, most likely.
Yes, definitely not doing 35 years.
So and you have also accomplished yourself quite well as acquitted yourself quite well as a host for various barbershop functions. So I'm just kind of curious, with your 2 quartets are now retired and your music educator career is coming around a bend. What's next on the horizon?
I'm hoping to be the new host of ShopChat.
Can we edit that out, please? So, all right. Well, that would be great. You know, we could probably use a makeover around here.
No, listen, I love this. I love the job you do and all that. I really don't know what's next, Shane. That's a good question. And I've been praying about it. I have been looking for the opportunity to be with my family more. And, you know, I have a new grandbaby. She's 5 months old.
Oh, wow.
She's perfect in every way.
Can
And,
I refer to you as Granny Cleveland for the rest of this interview, please?
yes, I will block your number from now on if you do that. But anyway, I think I know there are more opportunities out there. I don't know if you know a singing opportunity. Brett's in a gospel quartet, and he loves his gospel quartet. So there's not that many girl gospel quartets. I don't know. I'm thinking about
That's
that.
true. That's true.
I have all kinds of thoughts of things, but I don't know. That's a good question. So I'm still looking. If any of you out there have ideas, email Shane.
Well, you're probably going to have a ton of people emailing you wanting to be in your new gospel quartet, Debbie. So
Right.
there you go. Well, Debbie, you've given so much to so many people, and we're just so grateful that you were willing to give some of your precious time to us today to share with us some of the background of your life, and also to learn more about your quartets, and also just about what you do in real life. And we just want to thank you so much for all of the joy that you've given to us, all the joy you've given to so many students, and whatever is on the horizon for you, you've got a bunch of fans who are going to be right there to follow you every step of the way.
Well, thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. And I'm a big fan of yours and also of this program. Jojo DeRosa has created something awesome with this. And I think it's going to live, I was going to say live in infamy just because it came to me, but it's going to live in perpetuity.
Fummy.
Right?
Yeah, fummy. Whatever the opposite of infamy is, right?
Yes, fame. But he definitely has the right person in that seat, because you ask wonderful questions and you are just, everybody would love to sit and have a chat with Shane.
Well, that's very kind, but we're certainly appreciative that you
you
were one of those people. So thank you so much,
you.
Debbie. And we want to thank everybody for supporting our program. You guys are great. And we look forward to being with you on the next episode of ShopChat.
ShopChat. Shop.